So basically, because this is the first time we've spoken, which is kind of funny and bizarre. So I started Spring Street as an idea right here, and it happened. I was trying to work out the date. It must be something like December 20th or 21st, something like that, because it was exactly when London went into Tier 4 lockdown. And I was so looking forward to my Christmas holiday. We had a cottage booked and we'd been stuck here, couldn't go anywhere. And of course they said, you Londoners, they picked us out and they said, don't go anywhere. And it was like they were pointing to me personally, which they basically were. So it was very frustrating. And of course, I'd already been missing New York terribly. So I came up with the idea of making Spring Street because it's a place I know very well. I've stayed on Spring Street many times. So I contacted Yuko Otomo, who lives on Spring Street and lived there for many years with Steve Dalchinsky, both of them poets. And I said, well, what do you think about making a piece called Spring Street? And she said, I love that idea. Why don't you do this book, which I just happen to have here, which was Steve's book called A Superintendent's Eyes. And I thought that's great. The only thing is, I know that, but I already had a copy on the shelves, and it was not quite the story I wanted to tell. I of course, have my own experience of Spring Street, of living there for brief periods of time. Usually when they're off in Paris, I would stay there. And it's quite a dark, almost sort of like a poetic diary. And so with that, with a little bit of coaxing, I managed to get Yuko to say, oh, actually, my own poetry could maybe be in there too. So again, I love this particular book, like, which these are all little poems about the brick wall. Maren, you've sung lots of these poems.
By brick, sweat on sweat.
And of course, the problem was, how do you make an opera from this? Because, these, and I said to Yuko, this is more a song cycle, it's not really an opera. And she said, well, an opera would be great. And I was thinking, well, okay, but we don't have characters, we don't have narrative, we don't have a narrative arc. There were a lot of things missing, but what was really fun for me was to come up with the idea that maybe these are things that come out of three characters who might happen to live in the same block on Spring Street. And then that gave a lot of license to the idea that, these could be very multifaceted people, as we all are. They could say a lot of different things. And occasionally it would be great fun if they sort of bumped into each other in some sort of odd way. So what was really nice for me was coming to you three, because we've all worked together in some form before. Joy, you and I think we've done 4 projects together, and I can remember the first time we spoke as if it was just seconds ago. Mainly because it was just seconds ago. We've never spoken before this time, but we'd worked together before, and it really helped to shape the piece. So for example, trying to find characters in this. Hide, you and I spoke a few times. So because Yuko really wanted this to have its heart in Steve's book of poems, he became the obvious central character. So this sort of quite strong male character. So you and I had quite a few conversations about that character. And I really feel great about the things that came out of that, because it felt, as it did with all of you, even if we didn't have a direct dialogue, it felt like it led to things that are very definitely in the piece. I mean, what were you, do you want to say a bit about those conversations or about the character? Do you remember the character now? You've done loads of characters since then, but what was your feeling about playing that person?
That was biggest challenge, the character wise, since like but obviously, I have never experienced being a superintendent, and also nor, I understand the being an artist and starving artist part. That's, I could connect to that. But living in the 70s or like back then, how the Spring Street used to be, is I've never witnessed that time in New York City. So
yeah.
I think we had a lot of conversation with, the character, like, am I playing Steve, or am I who I am? And the kind of like with understanding what the poem is saying. I think we had a couple of conversations towards the character setting wise, and we ended up, I think Yuko also gave us permission
yes.
to be who I am, rather than playing the character of her husband. So I think that was the biggest, in a way, relief, and at the same time, personally, it was exciting that what I can bring to the table, in terms of kind of hybrid of the Steve himself and the person in the poem, and my personal experience and personal brain into it. So it's like three things emerged into one thing, and that's quite fulfilling as an artist, and that was really fun.
Spring Street starts on the Bowery and stops at the Hudson, or vice versa. I turned down Spring Street from the Bowery.
I didn't expect that we would film so much, and you went out in the street with Matt Gray from AOP and made all these shots. And Joy, you're in some of those shots as well. Maren, because you're in Philadelphia, it was harder to get you there, but there are these nice little intersection moments. And also, from our conversations, Hide, for example, Acid Trip, which is one of my favorite pieces of writing for voice, because it's insane. And you were all kind enough to indulge my insanity, which I fully acknowledge. But, Acid Trip, which is Steve's journal of a real acid trip, he's trudging barefoot through deep snow in New York City. He's going home, and the poem is becoming more and more crazy until there's a second half where everything is sort of glorious and things. And that starts on a low D. And this grew out of the fact that somewhere along the way you said, I've got a top C in falsetto. I must have asked you something about falsetto. And I was kind of, right, I'm having that. Okay. Can he really climb up there? So it had, just mad requirements.
I'm as
character that was coming partly, as you say, from Steve, and partly your own creation that you're bringing to it, came from that. I also love the fact in that particular piece that somehow, through some miracle, you actually managed to stand at Steve's street corner, and there are all these things in the poem about two men are standing on scaffolding high up on the building and red brick and so on. And there are two men with you sort of interacting, which is kind of like, we'd have had to pay so much money for that if if that had been a planned shot.
Yeah, it was a totally accident, to be honest, but it was amazing how that street was kind of like giving us all those tools without managing all those things. So, well, I guess like Steve must. I mean, those things were happening at the same time back then as well.
Sighs to men, high up on the scaffold pointing, the brick emitting red dust all over.
A lot of what came out for Acid Trip and other things that are in the writing came from our conversations that sort of fed into the character, but also came from what I knew Hide could do, having worked with him previously, and when he was foolish enough to tell me that he had a top C in falsetto. But then Joy went and trumped that, because we were having sort of back and forth on email, and I think I was emailing about a middle C, and you're saying, oh, my range is really typically, I've got that, but it's typically a lot higher. And then I think your top was like an F above, something that is basically from here, it's sitting on the moon somewhere. And so I never would have written, so there is in Spring Street, this piece Lightness, which is this big coloratura solo, or my version of coloratura, with apologies to people who write real coloratura. But for me, that was so exciting, because I would never have anticipated writing a solo like that. But I was kind of, okay, she said she can do that. I'll write this sort of crazy solo. I mean, was that fun to do? Did you just look at it and think, you monster, I hate you? Or what was your, you did, didn't you? I
spoke too soon. I probably shouldn't have emailed you. No, no, what was so interesting about learning that music at that specific time was, we were in lockdown, right? And I remember I actually wrote the line. I say the only time we are detached from our shadows is when we jump. And so that was like the whole feeling, being in lockdown, but then your imagination can run wild. I say the only time we are detaching from our shadows is when we're and we were going back and forth, and you were asking me, okay, can you do this? How about this? And I said, well,
so pushy.
And I said, well, some words I may have to modify. I remember telling you, right?
There's a bit at the end where you have to go, I can't even do it, at incredible speed.
Yes. Yeah, that was so exciting. But then, it was also, I don't know if that's how you felt when you were writing that. There was this juxtaposition of, the song was super playful, but then you're singing about something that's really serious. And at the same time, there's just like a lot of sadness in it,
Yeah,
and that's how.
I'm glad you picked that up, because in a way, Lightness, I wanted to, because a lot of the subject matter, particularly in Steve's book, is quite weighty. And, there's a lot of stuff that I chose to miss because I didn't want to be writing about those subjects. It wasn't a Spring Street that I sort of related to. So in a way, I wanted to pick up something that gave us a moment of, oh, what was that? Because that to me is very Spring Street. You're walking along Spring Street and suddenly someone does a big sort of coloratura solo and you thought you were in Soho, New York, it can really surprise you that way. But there is, I think, underlying almost everything there is a certain weight and substance that, is often in there. But I mean, actually, when you look at that poem, I looked at it beforehand. I don't know if I can find it. I marked it up. But it's such a short poem. That's the great thing with coloratura. You really get value for money, I feel. It's kind of, there's seven
All of those
very short lines.
And you
and-
gave me 16 pages.
60. See, I don't need much text, frankly. You know, I string each word by the meter, by the yard. Sorry. And then, Maren, we haven't spoken with you, of course. So your character, I feel, is like the most complex character in this, in that a lot of what I base the texts that I sent to come from are this thing that I showed before. This is Yuko's little book. And this is just all about the brick wall in her apartment. And that brick wall is literally that side, you know, we're talking about a very small apartment, you know, like a railroad apartment. And because I've stayed there many times, you know, often like very precious images, things collected, calendar dates and things are up there. And so these descriptions for me are very sort of rich and vivid. And there is a melancholy there as well, because Steve very sadly passed away in 2019. And so this was their home together. So I felt in setting those things that, you know, she had this sort of reserve. I mean, what was your feeling in singing the parts?
Yeah, so it's so interesting. First of all, I felt terrible that I didn't have a brick wall to film in front of. Like that I was just sort of like, where can I go? I don't know, you know. So unfortunately, I mean, I've got this lovely wall here, but like it's not brick.
I honestly, when I saw that, I kind of prefer that, in that I felt like, okay, a real brick wall is maybe going to be too much on the nose for us, you know, in that we will read a lot into that. Already looks like something extravagant happening to me on a brick wall, you know, it's full of colors and goings on. So I never felt worried about that at all, to be honest.
Well, that's great. I mean, you know, I really caught the kind of deep and complex stuff that came out of a kitchen wall, and also The Sky Is Always There.
The sky is always there above the desert, whether men walk there or not. Once, twice, or more, I had a dream crossing an endless space.
Like that have this like kind of, there's a melancholy to it. There's but it's not just sadness for sadness sake. It's like there's so much beauty. It's melancholy and the beauty, and like, you know, there's loss, but like this is what the world is. So it was a lot of fun to just kind of like live in those words, and then bring my voice to it. I mean, I have a, you know, pretty like dark and rich voice to begin with. So to have those words go together, it's pretty natural.
Yeah, no, I agree. There was just something in those poems that felt very accepting to me. You know, as you say, there's a sadness, but an acceptance that is a part of the essence. But the other thing I really enjoyed, because I've seen your Bodice Rippers show and other things, is I knew that you'd probably have some fun. And you know, I like the idea of these characters not being sort of one-dimensional. You know, she's staring at the wall and she's sad but accept it. You know, she also crosses with the other people. So for instance, housekeeping was tremendous fun, and I felt like it's so cheeky to ask it of any of you, because it's really like, I don't know what genre you'd even call it. It's like a disco track to me anyway.
Yeah.
You know, it's just got this loop that pumps away and things. And so
It was fun.
There's always at least one couple in the supermarket, not too bad looking. That seems to be in love. I'm staring at one right now. In the pasta aisle, man and women, they love to play house.
I like the idea. I had the idea that your character, whether it's her day job or her hobby, I don't know, but you know, she's kind of like a relationship scientist who's but specializes in couples in the supermarket. And it's all from Steve's poem, which is this very brief description of just, you know, couples who look like they're in love in the supermarket. And it becomes this sort of very silly piece. But that was really fun. Yeah. So
I loved your idea of having a scientist. So I kind of took that to the, like, I took it and ran with it. You know, I like wear my glasses and I like, you know, and I just, you know, I there was no way I could make that serious. So I felt like, let's just make it ridiculous and, you know,
exactly.
Seriously ridiculous.
Exactly. And I kind of love the fact it's, while the three of you never met during that period, you know, it actually is like a real ensemble piece. And Joy, you're there with kind of the magnifying glass and things.
Yes, I had probably like 2, and I made it so, you know, that it was color coordinated.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's great. And then Hide looks just the right amount of picked upon and dismissive, I think. He's kind of, he's laughing, but you know, he feels like, am I being criticized here? You know, and there's the line about, you know, my wife and I look like that in another store, you know, the hardware store or something, which is a very strange line, I have to say. The other, there are a few ensemble pieces, but the other one that I am very, very fond of is Into the Streets, which is, that's the most kind of, if you like, written piece. A lot of the others are written very quickly and I wanted them to feel sort of spontaneous, but that's a string quartet. And I kind of like that because it brings all the elements together. Matt, it has my very favorite shot in it, which is just a shot of a car going down a road. I'm sure you know the one I mean. That so this film starts with real footage of Steve and Yuko on the roof of their building on Spring Street. And they're looking at, and Steve is sort of pointing out things to the guy who took the shots. And as the camera goes up the street, we see a car go up Spring Street and it passes a mural of the hardware store. And somehow, again, with enormous budget, I imagine, you manage to get a black cat from a different angle, but the same shot. Except their shot is in 1993, and this, of course, is in 2021. So, I mean, how was it? You know, and I should say, sorry, after that shot, after it goes up Spring Street, we've been in 1993. We see it in 2021, the car progressing up the road, and then we pan, and there is Yuko, who we've just seen on the roof in 2021, and she's sitting on a bench with Hide. And with Matt Shipp, who is a very dear friend and a brilliant and very well-known musician. And I love that sort of junction between the two. But everyone's in that piece as well. Joy and Marion, your voices are throughout, but then in the center of the piece, Hide makes his entrance. And everyone's sort of in a window, kind of like a TV set. But Matt, do you want to talk a little bit about the filming experience there? You went and met with Yuko and you shot on that corner that I know so well.
Yeah,
what
I mean,
what were your thoughts?
Only that I was incredibly surprised that mural was still there. That the and their apartment as well. You know, that same door frame and sconce, and it's there are just while the buildings and a lot of the buildings themselves, especially in the village, may may remain, the details, tend to get like a mural or something like that,
Yeah.
tend to disappear. Like that hardware store is not there anymore. Or at least it's closed. I don't know for how long it's been closed, but so that's fantastic that we were able to find something that was just so distinct and be able to use that to pass from one era to another. And I'm sure that especially for you and for anyone who lived in that area, every time when I first moved to New York City, it was like I was living in Williamsburg, and this is like in the late 90s. And every time I go back, which is not very often, but like if every single year I go back, it's just totally a different place. And I lose my bearings. I'm like, I don't even know what this block is. What was this before? That certainly slowed down in Manhattan, but not totally. And so what's beautiful about this work and what you've done is that connection between the past, between memory and poetry. And it does have that kind of scope of looking at our lives in over years, and the connection of the humanity and how the city changes around us. But not that I'm finding the theme for you, but that there were just so many elements to be able to grab onto.
So, and anyway, I guess I should wrap up, but just to say, so we're going to premiere on July 24th on Genie. They are kindly doing all the things that people who know about those things do. I have no idea. And I'm very much crossing fingers that we'll actually put this onto a stage or into a performance place, and we'll actually meet each other, and then we'll see what happens. Because like you say, Maren, I think there'd be an awful lot of fun if these were like neighboring characters and things. So it could do lots of things. So fingers across for that. And huge thanks, honestly, to all of you, because it's amazing what you did when, as I say, I just started here and thought, I'm going to write something, just to rescue myself from lockdown and things. And you were all so incredibly kind and generous with your talent. So thank you sincerely for that.
It was so much fun, and it was great to be outside again, working with artists. And it was really fresh.
Great.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you so much for writing it. I mean, for me, during lockdown, it was a way for me to do something really creative, and not even have to leave my house. So,
well, my pleasure. Absolutely.
I was gonna say, I was thinking how nourishing it felt for me musically, because I was like, in the corner, the four corners of my house.
Yeah. Tell me about it. This room, yes.
Thank you so much.
Hey, no, honestly, my pleasure. Anyway, so
everyone, like, it was so fun. Honestly, like, it was. I really had fun, and at the same time, it was a lot of challenge in both vocally and character-wise. But with both of your help, Matt and Pete, I think this was this is the best work like I ever had. So I really appreciate both of your help. So thank you so much.
Hey, no, everyone was so daring as well. That was the thing I loved, is kind of, we did crazy things, and, I didn't get sort of, long emails back saying, "What are you thinking? You're insane." So thank you for that. Okay, so I will see everyone on a stage sometime later in the year. Who knows? Let's cross fingers anyway. Thank you so much.